Yesterday, you felt mostly fine. Today, your body is wrecked. You did not eat anything different. You didn't do anything different. And yet, here you are wondering what changed. What if it did not come out of nowhere, but something caused it and you just haven't figured out what it is? Let's talk about it.
Welcome to Chronic Illness Moms. If you're more than just a tired mom, I'm talking trying to make it through the day without crashing by noon while raising neurodivergent kids, you're not alone. I'm Ashley, a wife, mom, and certified health coach. I have lived with autoimmune disease and flare-ups that made everyday life feel harder than it should. After years of pushing through and burning out, I learned how much stress, poor sleep, and nervous system overload were driving my symptoms. Everything changed when I started building small, realistic habits that actually supported my body instead of fighting it. In this podcast, you'll learn simple habits that help you to feel better. So pop in your earbuds and take a break from the chaos. It's you time.
Hey friend, welcome back. Okay, I want to talk to you today about a connection that took me really years to understand. And looking back, I really wish someone would have sat me down and explained it to me earlier, because I really think it would have changed how I treated my body significantly. It is that connection between what we are carrying emotionally and then what shows up physically in our body. The flare-ups, the brain fog, the joint pain, the fatigue that feels like it comes out of nowhere, swollen hands, the morning where you wake up and you just feel completely off in your body and you cannot trace it back to a single thing. For a long time, I treated all of that like it was random. And I would almost honestly, I had to become essentially a detective, because for a long time, I just thought my body was just being unpredictable. Like the flares would come and go on their own timeline and there was nothing I could do about it, or there was nothing that was contributing to it. And then I started learning about what is actually happening underneath the flare. And then once I saw it, it made everything make so much more sense. There is a real traceable biological connection between the emotional weight that we are carrying and the inflammation that shows up in our bodies. And today I want to walk you through what that looks like. And then I also want to share one small thing for you to try this week. This, again, is not going to be a big overhaul. It's not a new routine. It's just one tiny habit that I think is going to surprise you with how much your body actually responds to it. And real quick, if this is feeling like it's hitting close to home and you want to sit down with someone and look at what is driving your flares specifically, that is what my one-on-one Feel Better coaching calls are for. We sit down for an hour, we look at your lifestyle, we compare it to my Feel Better framework so we can figure out that one piece that is going to move you forward in improving your chronic symptoms. This is not a complete overhaul. We're focusing on one simple habit and fitting it into the season that you are currently in. You can find out more by going to ashleybraden.com/coaching, and I will also have the link down in the show notes below. Okay, so let me tell you about a season for me where this happened and where I really started to put things together. I had this time where flare-ups would come out of nowhere. And I mean, that's what I thought at the time anyway. And I woke up, my knees would be aching, my joints were hurting in my knees. I just felt like my hands were kind of puffy and stiff. My brain was so foggy. I was having a hard time even putting a sentence or a thought together for the first hour that I was awake. And the really frustrating part of this was that I could not find anything different in my routine to explain why I was struggling so much. I had been sleeping well. I had been eating my usual stuff. I hadn't pushed myself too hard physically. And so it just felt so confusing to me. And this is where I almost fell into this cycle of thinking, okay, this is just random and there's nothing going on and I have no control over this. But whenever I sat down and made myself really start thinking about what had been going on, not just physically, but also mentally, emotionally, over the past several weeks, I realized, I'm onto something here. And whenever I started to look at it that way, that pattern showed up almost immediately. Because the weeks before that had been some of those types of weeks where, it's a hard conversation that you feel like didn't really get resolved the way you wanted, or there was a parenting moment that left me feeling really inadequate. And I had not really let myself sit with that or process through what that felt like and really to work through that. I just moved on to the next thing because that's what I had to do. There might have been an evening where I scrolled social media for a little bit too long and then went down one of those quiet rabbit trails where you turn into a comparison spiral where I started thinking, okay, I'm behind on everything. I'm not doing enough in this area. I'm not doing enough in this area. I'm failing in this area. Now, again, none of these were like a big giant crisis. None of it was the kind of thing that you would mention to someone if they asked how you were doing. But all of it was just sitting there in my body, building up, unprocessed, unnamed, and just building up over time. And that was when it hit me. The flare did not actually come out of nowhere. It came from everything that I had been carrying that I had not actually let myself feel or process. My body had been holding on to all of it without me realizing it. And then when the load got too heavy, it came out as inflammation, stiffness, brain fog, physical pain that I could not trace to anything physical or anything that I'd eaten, diet related, nothing like that. And so this is what I want to say, friend. If you have ever had a flare and felt completely confused about where it came from, I want you to hear me on this. You are not making it up. You are not crazy. Your body is not being random. There is something that is happening underneath that is causing those symptoms to really ramp up. And a lot of times it can be related to emotions. It could be something else, but there is always something underneath. And a lot of times it's just that we haven't been taught to look for the thing. And that's why I mentioned earlier, I essentially had to kind of become like a detective for my own body and my own symptoms, and just become really in tune with what my body was telling me based off of symptoms and how I was feeling. So let me walk you through what is actually going on, because I think when you see it, it changes the way that you treat yourself as well. And, I want to be really clear. I am not going to spend a ton of time in this episode talking about cortisol or the stress recovery cycle today, because we've been talking about that a lot over the last couple of episodes. Today, I want to go a little bit different, and I want to talk about inflammation specifically and how it works in the body, because that can sometimes be the missing piece for so many of us. And a lot of times inflammation is what is driving so many of us to feel so bad all the time, and we don't even realize it. Okay, the first piece is this. Inflammation is your immune system doing its job. We want to think of it as a bad thing. Inflammation is this horrible thing, and it does not feel good. I totally understand that. But your body getting inflamed is actually a good thing, because it means it's doing its job. When you cut your finger, the area gets red and warm and swollen. That is inflammation. Your immune system is rushing white blood cells to that area to clean up and to start the healing process. So this is what is supposed to happen when something happens to your body. The same thing happens if you fight off a virus or you sprain your ankle. That inflammation is the response. And then once that threat is gone, the inflammation calms back down and you go on with your life. So inflammation itself is not a bad thing. It's your body doing what it was designed by God to do. However, we have to figure out, why are you being chronically inflamed? What is the source of it? Because until the body gets the signal that that threat is gone, it's going to continue to be inflamed. So the other thing that you need to keep in mind is that your immune system does not only respond to physical threats, like you getting your finger cut. It also responds to emotional and mental ones, and it responds basically the same way. So think of your immune system kind of like a security guard for your body. The guard's job is to scan the environment for threats, and in this case, it would be your body, and send out an alarm when it spots one. And here's the thing that we might not think about, and it's the fact that this guard does not stop. So if it notices a threat, it doesn't stop to analyze, whether it's a cut on your hand or a virus or the weight of feeling like you're not enough as a mom. It just sees threat and it sends out the alarm. And that alarm can show up in your body as inflammation. Your body doesn't have a separate system for emotional pain or physical pain. It has one system and it reads them both the same way. So when you go through something hard, emotionally hard, your body is not just feeling it emotionally, it is also firing up that low-grade inflammation response on the inside. And in a normal, healthy, stress, then recovery cycle, that alarm is going to come back down and everything is going to be fine. But when you are running back-to-back days, when you are carrying things that you have not had a chance to work through or to really even talk through with someone else, to pray through, to find some resolution on, when you are managing your own chronic symptoms on top of caregiving, that alarm often is going to stay on all the time. And that is the piece that I really want you to hear. The second piece is this. When emotional stress doesn't get sorted through, processed, whatever you want to call it, when you don't work through those emotions that you're feeling, it does not just disappear. So the body, you've probably heard this. There's a book about it. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. It's not me being poetic. That's actually how it works. And that book called The Body Keeps the Score, it explains it in a lot of detail. And it talks about what happens when the emotional load that you experience sits in the body without being processed or worked through. that alarm is going to constantly, it's going off all the time, nonstop. And what happens is that inflammation you have, it stays low and steady all the time underneath everything. And over weeks and months and even years of this happening, your body starts to express all of that stored up load as physical symptoms. Even though it started emotional, now it has turned into physical symptoms: joint pain, skin flares, gut symptoms, headaches, brain fog, fatigue that is not from doing anything, mysterious swelling, heart racing when nothing is actually wrong. The list is long and it is different for everyone because every body has its own weak spots. And so what symptoms show up for you are based on your own, really your own physiology. And this is what I think so many of us, we feel like we're going crazy when we go to the doctor and we say X, Y, and Z is going on, and they run tests and they say everything looks fine because the inflammation that is driving your symptoms might be driven by something that they didn't measure. You know, they might have checked your thyroid and hopefully they did a full thyroid panel. They might have measured your blood count. Maybe they checked your iron. Hopefully they checked your ferritin if they did as well. But they did not measure what your nervous system has been holding on to for the last 6 months, for the last 10 years. They did not measure the emotional load that you have been carrying around as a caregiver in a body with chronic symptoms. So all of their tests come back fine, but you still feel terrible because the underlying piece was never on or going to be found in a test in the first place. All right, the third thing I want to talk about is this, and this is related specifically to us being in summer, the season of summer right now. So summer comes with its own emotional load that is really easy to dismiss because nobody really talks about it. And I mentioned it a couple episodes back, but there is this really great family togetherness piece, which is nice. Having more time with your kids is really wonderful, but also it depends on your family dynamics, but it could mean more sibling friction, more emotional regulation work for us as moms. There's also this comparison piece that happens a lot during the summer. All of the social media posts are suddenly showing pictures of the perfect family vacations and beach days and sunburned but smiling kids. And you are scrolling through it on the days when you feel like you just barely held it together. There is the make it look easy pressure. It's this unspoken rule that summer is supposed to be fun and light and easy. And if you are struggling, then there is something wrong with you. And on top of all of that, summer brings its own physical stressors because we have heat, depending on where you live, travel, schedule shifts, less sleep because the sun sets later, and all of that stacks together on top of those emotional and physical inputs, and it's pressing on your system all at once. And the reason that I bring this up is because we cannot always control internal stress. You know, we can't make it where our kids don't have a meltdown, where they don't struggle. We can't make a hard conversation easier because a conversation requires both people to be able to participate in a healthy manner. We can't make people in our lives less stressful. That's not ours to control. But we do have control over some of the inputs that we are around. And there are actually two different categories of inputs that I want to talk about a little bit today. And we're going to just briefly mention one because I'm going to go into it deeper in the next episode. So we have emotional inputs and then we have food input. Now, the reason why I want to briefly mention food is because it does send signals to your immune system as well. So we're going to talk about that. And I want to keep this really short, again, because I'm going to mention this more in depth on Thursday. But I just want to leave you with a little bit of an introduction to it. And the reason why is because every piece of food that you eat is sending a message to your immune system, either a calm down signal or an alarm signal. So that same security guard that we talked about earlier is reading your food the same way it reads your stress, because really it's just scanning your body in general for any kind of stress signal. And the thing with food is that it tends to fire off that alarm for most of us. And the foods that do that are the ones that often they creep up into our daily diet without us really noticing it. It could be added sugar, it can be gluten, it could be heavily processed packaged stuff with like 30 different ingredients and you can't name half of them. It could be seed oils, which are in pretty much every restaurant meal that you go to. None of it feels really big or dramatic at the moment, but when you're consistently eating these things over time, it's going to keep that low level alarm going, stacked right on top of the emotional load that you are already carrying. So you have two contributors. You have the emotional input of everything that you're carrying and dealing with, and then also the food input. And you don't need to pull both at once. That's what I want you to hear me now. I'm not suggesting you have to focus and deal with both of these at the same time. Really, the goal is that you pick one, whichever feels the most likely to be adding to your inflammation, just based on how your life is looking for you, like in the last several weeks. That's the one I would say to focus on. And we're going to dig in a little bit deeper on the next episode about what that could look like if it's food for you. But I just want to, before we kind of dig into the takeaway for this episode, I want to give you a little bit of a recap. So just remember that your body reads emotional stress as a threat, and it's going to fire up the inflammatory response because of that. The same way it responds to a cut or a virus. In a normal day, and if your body is functioning well, if you're giving it the safety signals, that alarm is going to calm back down and everything is fine. But when you're running back to back without recovery, when the alarm stays on all the time, over and over, weeks, months, years, then that's going to start showing up as flares, which with the symptoms that we all experience so frequently. And now I just want to encourage you again, that is not your body being unpredictable. It is keeping score of everything that you've been carrying, everything you've been putting in it, everything you've been carrying, all of it. And again, the food is doing the same thing. So some of what you eat is sending that same alarm signal, which is quietly stacking on top of everything else that you've been dealing with. So here's the one thing I want you to focus on for this week. Now, if you say, I really don't think emotional stuff is my struggle, I think it's more food, then this episode might not be for you to focus on anything. It might be that you listen to the next episode, which is going to be out on Thursday, and that is the one that you focus on. But if you are evaluating your life and you are saying, yeah, I actually can see that I've had a lot of emotionally difficult circumstances and I really have not taken the time to work through them, to allow myself to feel what I feel, name it, and move forward, then what I want to say to you is pick one emotional input and pull it out for just 7 days. So if you're having a really hard week emotionally, then pick something that has been adding to that load. And now I'm not saying, again, we can't change what someone else is doing, but if there's a social media account that makes you feel like you're behind, why don't you unfollow it? If there is a show that just feels a little ick and a little heavier than your body can deal with right now, don't watch it. If scrolling on your phone is not really making you feel any better about yourself, then can you cut it out? Maybe it's that you have to take time at the end of the day to process through a difficult situation, through prayer, through journaling, through talking it through with your spouse or a friend. And this doesn't mean that everything is going to be resolved. It just means that we're taking ownership for our feelings and we're saying, this happened. It was really hard. I wish it wasn't this way. And I just want to share, whether through prayer, whether through journaling, whether through talking to someone, I just want to share that this is what happened and it really stunk. And I wish that this wasn't the case. Just even naming it and calling it out instead of shoving it down, acting like we don't have to deal with it. It's hard, but I'm just going to move forward. I'm just going to push forward as if there won't be any consequences for that. And that is just not the case. And that's something I had to learn myself because it can be really easy to just, again, I've said this many times, I'm a very task-driven person. So it can be easy to move on to the next task instead of saying, hey, this was really hard. And while I don't expect anyone to have a solution for me, just owning the fact that this was really hard is going to be good for me. And that's really the thing is we don't have to expect a solution or a resolution if sometimes there's not a resolution or a solution. But slowing down long enough and really just bearing witness to that difficult situation, whether it's with another person, with God, talking it through, like writing it through yourself, through journaling, whatever that is, that can be such a great step forward in being able to process through those hard emotional situations. Okay, so focus on that for the next 7 days, whatever that thing is for you. If it is, I'm going to, whenever something hard happens, instead of shoving it down, I am going to take 5 minutes to pray about it, to journal about it. I'm going to take 5 minutes to talk to my spouse about it. Or maybe it's, I'm going to stop scrolling social media because it really is just making me feel like I'm feeling as a mom, as a wife, as all the things. And so I'm not going to be scrolling social media or following that account that makes me feel like I am not living up to the standard that everyone else has. Okay, so I want you guys to pick the one thing for you, focus on it for the next 7 days, and then just notice what your body does. That's really the experiment. And again, these are all experiments, and I call them that because, kind of like I mentioned earlier in the episode, you really have to become a detective for yourself. Start testing out things and seeing. It really is an experiment for you to see, did this make a difference or did it not? If it did, now let me dig a little bit deeper and figure out why. If it didn't, that's okay. That's still data for me to move forward and say, okay, this was obviously not the thing. So now can I move forward and try what the next thing is? And that's how we really learn to care for and advocate for ourselves. And so I want you to do that for the next 7 days. And then also I want you to come over to the Facebook group, to our free Facebook community, and share with me what you picked. What is the one thing that you picked, that emotional input that is not helping you? What are you choosing to give up or to add in, whichever way it goes for you? And I will have that Facebook group linked down in the show notes below, or you can go to facebook.com/groups/chronic health moms to join us. All right, friends, that is all for this episode. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you back next time.
Hey friend, I hope you found today's episode helpful. If you did, would you take a minute to share it with another mom who's struggling with chronic symptoms? And leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It means the world to me to know this podcast is making a difference for you. All right, it's time for me to go tackle those snack requests, and remember that a short walk, even if the kids turn it into a race, still counts as self-care. Keep chasing those little wins. Even when it feels messy, you're making progress. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. I'm not a doctor, and this podcast is not intended to treat or diagnose any condition. You're the expert on your body. Listen to it and reach out to a trusted provider for support.